Hi there, this is Carmen again from Rojas Consulting. I wanted to take just a quick minute today and talk to you about a hot topic that's in the news, and it's all about the AffordableCareAct.gov website and the failures and shortcomings there. This is not a political statement. I don't want anybody thinking that this has something to do with who I support or endorse as candidates and political things. That's not what this is about. I wanted to use this again as a teachable moment and as an example for those of us in the industry and for those of us that are into marketing and websites and small business owners and even medium and large business owners about how proper website development should go and should not go. This is a great example of how it should not go. So let me get into just a few points I wanted to point out. The first thing that screams at me from this whole mess and what I've seen in the news is that there was either non-existent or ineffective project management. That to me it just stands out just as clear as day. I've taken project management. I'm actually certified as a project manager, so I do understand the processes of project management, and it's just very, very clear that those were not done in this case. There should have been a timeline, a very detailed timeline where you have a forward progression and a reverse progression. You have lags and all of these things built in, and you should have known how much slack there was and all of that good stuff, so that when the deadline was set, you knew pretty much down to the day, or you can even get it down to the hour of what has to be done when in order to reach your deadline with certain qualities and benchmarks and things like that put into place. That can be done. There is software out there to do it. There are people smart enough out there to do it that even if there wasn't the software, it could be built and it could be rationalized and it could be understood. But for whatever reason, that just wasn't done. So now what we're hearing is, well, there are all these last minute changes. Well, the project manager should have been able to whip out that timeline and say, no, your change puts us, either jeopardizes quality or it pushes us over our timeline. Kathleen Sebelius or whoever the next person up in the chain of command should have been made aware of the request, and that would have stopped that whole problem. Either the project manager that either didn't share that information, that timeline process was never actually done, it wasn't enforced. There's some critical flaw with the timeline and the change log process that allowed for this type of an error to occur. I don't doubt that that is what happened, and you could make the argument that perhaps there were political forces that influenced that people were making last minute changes and demanding that they be done intentionally to make the website even more complicated. I'm not getting into conspiracy theory and all of that, but again, project management, a good project management should have been able to head that off at the pass so that it wasn't a problem and it didn't affect the website in the way that it clearly has. Another point that I want to make is I've had the fortune of working with some very, very talented web developers over the last few years, and one thing that I can definitely guarantee you is that if you give web development people concrete information, 99% of the time they will give you outstanding results. The industry of web development and web developers are some of the most creative, passionate people that you ever want to meet. They will work overtime. They will, untangle some of the most unbelievable coding messes that I've ever seen and get a kick out of it and love it and do it very, very, very well. What they don't like are changes. They don't like vague things. They like things to be concrete, black and white, and for them to know exactly what's going to happen. If you're not familiar with the back end of websites and what coding is and all of that, but your website is really you can think of it as a very long mathematical formula that basically gets transmitted electronically, and it goes from one calculator, so to speak, or computer, to another computer calculator that interprets this code. And depending on how complicated the website is, the more complicated the code is. So for a site like this, small errors, which we marketing, or small changes, which we marketing people are famous for, can have huge ripple effects in code. And that appears to also have been a problem as well, is that the web development seemed to have kind of stopped and started as it went through the political issues of going before the Supreme Court and being challenged by Republicans, and Republicans threatening to shut down the government over this thing, and all of that good stuff. Those kinds of conditions make good web development very difficult because it makes the picture cloudier for the web developer. And that's something that you definitely want to avoid with your web development. If for some, first of all, I would say get your, know what you want before you bring a web developer into the picture. It's always good to get their opinion and their feedback, but when you are ready to pull the trigger and move forward with developing a website, you need to have a very, very clear picture about what you want and don't want in your website. Now, I have to say that strongly, because if you come back in after the fact, not only will it probably cost you more for a web developer to undo your mess of a website and fix it, but it will also frustrate the daylights out of them and make them less likely to do the kind of brilliant creative work they're known for and that they can do for you. So if you do have this going on where you have a web development team, and there are things that are going on and maybe some areas that are not quite as crystal clear and concrete, I would keep all of that political emotionalness away from your web development team. I'm not suggesting that you create a silo, but I'm telling you that you need to think like a web developer. Web developers don't want to hear, well, so and so didn't like him. Well, so and so, if they would just get off their high horse, they would. They don't want to hear all of that. They don't deal well with that. And a lot of what was going on with the political wrangling of the Affordable Care Act website was happening publicly. And I'm sure that web developers didn't have to wait for a briefing. It was on Twitter. It was on CNN. All of the things that the Republicans were saying. In other, industry, and I don't want to blame it on Republicans, but, a lot of what was being said by both sides, by everybody involved, was very public, very fast. And that just frustrates web developers. I can guarantee you that maybe they haven't officially come out and said it, but that's definitely a factor. The third thing I wanted to mention that I see as a big potential stumbling block of this website was that everything was created in these silos, as I mentioned before. You had one group that was tasked with one specific function or task of the website, and then there was another group that was doing a different function, and then a third group that was involved in a third function. And so because these individual silos were not connected and were not communicating with each other in terms of the processes, they developed very, very good individual functions. But the problem was when you tried to merge the functions together, they didn't work so well together. And that's one of the risks of having websites done in this type of a silo format. Depending on, there are some websites that actually need that to be done. I imagine that there was research, and because of the timeline and all of this stuff, why that method was chosen. But I just want to warn people that if you are using that kind of a method to build your website, you absolutely have to build in at least as much, if not more, testing at the end, quality assurance checks and all of that to make sure that the website actually works and functions as a unit and not as individual silos. If you're going to use that method, you have to test. You have to do a full on test everything to make sure that at every turn all the systems are working in unison and going in the same direction on the website. If they're not, you have to fix it. And you have to build in the time for a fix. You can't just build in the time to test. You have to build in the time to fix, so that even when you find out that there's something wrong, you have the time to fix it. It's not good enough to just know that there's something wrong. So I would definitely, I'm not saying don't do that type of website build, but if that's the type of website build you're doing, make sure that you have plenty of time in there to do the testing. The final point that I wanted to make with the website is what I was just alluding to, and that was the fact of testing. You absolutely have to test websites before they go public. I can't make that strong enough. Whether you're building your own site, whether you're paying somebody to do it, you need to test it. You need to test and make sure that your links are functioning properly. You need to give it a second look at, is it opening in all the browsers properly? How is it opening in mobile devices? Is it run through the whole thing? And I would definitely, there's debate, and we actually have some blogs and whatnot about the usefulness of focus groups and market testing. But if you're doing your own website as an entrepreneur, I would definitely get somebody outside of yourself to do the thing, to run through the site, run through the complete process from start to finish, and it needs to be somebody other than yourself, because you can predict and you know what it's supposed to do. You won't see that the there is spelled wrong, or you won't see that this link is not working the way that it should, because you're looking at it through your own lens and through your own eye. But I would definitely recommend to you that you test your website, but have somebody else test it. Those are my tips. Those are my opinion about the AffordableCareAct.gov website. Again, it's not a political statement. This is a statement about a website and about a system failure, not about any particular comment about the president or any of the members of his administration or any of the very dedicated, I'm sure, hardworking people that are working to bring this website around and trying to get it back online. I did hear they made good progress. So go web development, go team. I hope that they're working towards getting the kind of website that President Obama had in mind. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll sign off. Have a great day.